Captain's Log, April 3rd, 2026. Hello, I'm Captain Vile. Good on you, you've made it to Friday. I've been coughing all day for some reason. I've just knocked over my water bottle while reaching for it. Don't know if that picks up on the mic or not. Fun if it did. Anywho, just give me a bit to sip. And then we'll be back with your regularly scheduled rambling. So I had a few ideas over the week to talk about that, annoyingly, I didn't have a chance to write down. I thought of them during work. And this was after my break, so I only have, like, the vague idea on them. So let's see if I can remember them. But I was able to watch, as I pull up the review, here it is, The Ice Pirates. Boy, was this a movie. So, I gave it quite a long review. And I'll get into this later. But before I get into this, it's a radio-style show. I'm cooking dinner as I speak, not as we speak. Oh, no. But I'll get into the review and then if you 2 stars. I said, I wish I could Frankenstein parts of this movie out and have them used elsewhere. This movie does some interesting things, but most of it is just there to be there. The characters escape because a robot saw them, but can't explain... The characters escape because a robot saw them, but the robot can't explain they got on a ship, and the villain says they should make robots that can speak. Within 5 minutes, we are then introduced to the princess's personal talking robot butler. The princess rigs the ship to blow, if the water is messed with. After this, an egg hatches with the creature that attacks the crew and then flees. They read up on what the creature is, and it says to keep it away from water. So I thought, alright, they have 3 days to reach their destination, so I guess they'll spend it hunting down this thing so it does not get into the water, and then have the ship read it to someone messing with the water, and then have the ship blow up. They don't do that. It shows up to rip off an alien. It shows up to rip off Alien, like the like Xenomorph, because it looks like a chest burster anyway, and exists as a herpes joke. That's all. It shows up again, and then it dies, but it just shows up so they can say, "Oh, one character has herpes now." This movie isn't all bad. There's interesting parts like the robot hands in the walls or the time fight, but most of it is poorly thought out, and they're just to rip off something else. And, like, there's passable stuff in this movie that could be used elsewhere, and in fact is used elsewhere, but that's not me being like, oh, they're ripping, the whole movie is a Star Wars ripoff, and then this part of it is like an Aliens ripoff, or just Alien ripoff. But there's one part here. I said the robot hands. So there's a part where they're, like, relaxing, and the character is cooking, and in the kitchen, there's robot arms on the walls that are helping him cook. And they did that by having someone inside the wall, and they have, like, their arms in these, like, gloves. Like, the contamination, like, in hospitals and stuff like that. It's that. And that effect is identical to what they did in the 1940s Beauty and the Beast, where instead of being, like, anthropomorphized, it's just like the servants became part of the manor, and there's, like, arms jutting out of the wall holding candles, and they're actually, like, actors they painted silver. I mean, it's black and white, so it doesn't really matter, but they have a metallic effect. And it's not intentional. It's clearly done because, like, budget reasons. They didn't want to make, like, a prosthetic, like, robot arm and whatnot, but it wasn't intended to call back to that movie, but it reminded me of that, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that scene where they're, like, making dinner and, like, relaxing. But it just... And the time fight where, oh, they're aging up as the fight goes on, and, like, there's a funny joke that I actually laughed at, where it's, like, they're elderly, and it says 10 minutes ago I would have been able to fight them. And it's like, oh, like, it would have been 10 years ago, I would have wiped the floor with these guys, but it's 10 minutes, that's funny. But everything else is just not thought out, and just... I don't like saying movies are bad, because there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into making them, and there are snippets of this movie that are good. As I said earlier, like the Beauty and the Beast and the time fight, and some other things I can't quite think of at the moment. So I always struggle with outright saying that a movie is bad. I'm not going to deny that there are just objectively bad movies, but I'm so hesitant to say that something is terrible. This really... It's like, I don't know, it's got parts of a good movie in it. It's with The Bride, where I gave it a higher score than this. Similar, there's good scenes, there's really well done, like, makeup, but just the story is half-baked. The story's fine, I don't quite have the... Excuse me. Water, anyway. I can't quite articulate what I don't like about this movie, but it's got an unlikable main character. It's very clearly ripping off other things to rip it off. But at the same time, there's some interesting things done. And, as I said earlier, I just always have trouble saying the movie is outright bad. Even though there are outright bad movies. I'm just so hesitant to... I don't know. But that's what I watched. I finally did see it. Speaking of outright bad movies, I'd heard that the Mario movie was poorly paced, but I cannot speak to that. I've not seen it. I closed the tab and then this, like, I don't know, the basic, like, Windows pop-up full of, like, ads, and there was an ad for that, and it made me think of that. So I'll check Captain's Log topics, see if I actually do have something squirreled away. Doubt it, though. Yeah, nope, nothing. Piss. So I'm annoyed, but here. So I have, I now have a talking point about the show. Look at that, isn't it fun? Although I've got 4 minutes before I gotta go put my food in the oven, and then 15 minutes after that. I think I think it should take around that time, and then I can pick it up if I go over. So I wonder why I'm so fixated on storytelling during this show. I always want there to be some anecdote, but I struggle. I don't think I struggle because I'm doing it now, but I think I just prefer to tell stories than, I guess, talk aimlessly. Because I suppose it isn't aimlessly. I have a point here. Maybe it's just I feel that you get more out of this podcast if there is a beginning, middle, and end to a talking point. Well, I guess that. Again, there's like, they'll peter out on their own. Like, this one has a beginning. We're approaching the middle, perhaps. But I wonder, is that a good way to look at it? Because this isn't like a radio drama. You don't tune in to see, like, what Captain Vile did with his week. You tune in to listen to Captain Vile ramble. Maybe he'll tell a story. Maybe he'll go on a talking point. Maybe he'll tell you about a movie he saw. There's not really a... Ooh, let's... Like, I enjoy doing radio things, and I'm branching way off topic here. I'm gonna jump back to maybe the appeal of the show. From comments I've received, I don't receive too many comments on Captain Vlog specifically, nor do I expect to. That is not some veiled like request, hey, dear Violin, listening to this, could you perchance comment? No, only do that if you want to. But the ones I do get are, well, I could say one of the recent ones was confusion in what this series was. Someone said, well, what is this? I was like, oh, it's a podcast. But another one was, is this like a radio station? Or maybe some one-off joke about something I mentioned. But brass tacks, people listen to this because it's nice to have something to listen to. Shocker, I know. As someone who has a lot of downtime where I'm working on something that takes a while and doesn't make any noise, like drawing, so it's nice to have the silence so I don't just go insane listening to my own thoughts over and over again, but I do that enough at work. But yeah, I suppose there's like a internal pressure. I always want there to be a narrative. Makes me sound somewhat shiftless, so I'll phrase that better as I always want there to be some kind of story being told. I see myself as something of a storyteller. I'm always writing scripts and characters and writing world building to better, I guess, fit those scripts and characters. But I'd never write just to write. And by that I mean what I'm doing now. I never just kind of put pen to paper and start writing words, and I'll have like a string of sentences where it's like word association, where I started thinking of a mouse, and then I thought of an animal mouse, and then I thought of like a cat, and then I thought of Tom and Jerry, and then I thought of cartoons, and then I think of Looney Tunes, and then I think of Diamond Eye, because I don't get into this very much, but Diamond Eye's got a lot of inspiration from Looney Tunes. This isn't intentional. I'm not trying to like advertise him, and that's annoying. I gotta go. Hang on, and I'm back now. But we've got 15 minutes, so don't always intend to wrap it back around to my characters or advertise them. But I think that does help my point, in that within maybe, I wasn't counting, 10 certainly associations, I was able to wrap it back around to my own creations, back to something with like a story I'm familiar with. And I think that the reason for that is I'm, well, one, eager to talk about like things I've made. I'm passionate about that. But two, that's something I've made completely. It's my own like creation. I know everything about it. So I know I will never be able to misspeak about it unless I have had a head injury and like forgot something. But if I'm simply talking aimlessly or talking about like concepts, I am liable to misspeak. I could get something wrong, or I could misquote someone, or something like that. But with this, I can't misquote myself. I am myself. So that's why I probably go towards talking about stories, because I'll be the one who's encountered it, and I'll whatnot. Various. So that's why I go for anecdotes. But whilst I was putting my pizza in the oven, I remembered a talking point. I'm going to have to reverse engineer this talking point. I only remembered it was about the circus, and the circus being the idea of freedom for children, specifically. So it was the running. There's a trope where a child runs away to the circus because it's typically seen as freedom for them. There's, well, it's just a show. It's wacky and cathartic, and there's clowns, which are very untamed. So a child would see that as freedom, so they run away and go become a performer. But in some things, not all things, it's a reverse of the trope that I quite like. But in Psychonauts, you play as Rasputin, who escapes from the circus to go to the Psychonauts. So he escapes the idea, or the child's idea, of freedom, and then goes into a very controlled environment, which I thought was a neat explanation. Or a neat juxtaposition is what I think it is. And that was it. So he goes from very cathartic to something that's very controlled. There's a science to it, and I suppose there's maybe a science of circuses and humor, but it's less easy to measure than like psychic abilities within that universe. And there was another example I thought of that I couldn't, but I did remember, whilst thinking about this talking point, I was able to wrap it back to the Riddler, because he was his first origin was that he's a carny who kind of got trapped at the circus, just hustling like lowlives, and then went out into being the Riddler, and having incredibly controlled plans. So that's, again, escaping freedom and going into like heavily controlled environments. So I quite like that. I'll see if there's... oh, that's what it was. It was... This is an odd reference. Not an odd reference, but an odd thing for me to look into. Dr. Neo Cortex from Crash Bandicoot. That's it. So I was thinking about Ripperoo, which is a villain in Crash Bandicoot, which is a platforming game. And he doesn't have very much lore. So now I've opened the floodgates. I've successfully reverse engineered it, folks. Yeah. Okay, so I'll put a pin in that. Or here, I'll write it down so I don't forget it. Just typing it into the goddamn search bar. So, Ripperoo doesn't have any lore. So I wondered if Cortex ever, like, commanded him to guard the waterfall he does, or if he just places him at the waterfall, and him being, like, completely insane ensures he'll be an obstacle even without being instructed to stop anyone from getting past, that he'll just attack them. And I wonder if I could, like, read about that, because there's an art book for Crash Bandicoot that goes into more, like, character depth than the games do, because they're not really about the story, it's just about the platforming and being stupidly annoying to play. But they go into Dr. Cortex's backstory in that he was a clown who, like, he grew up in a family of clowns and was bullied by his, like, siblings, and then fled the circus and went into supervillainy, like the Riddler, being in a very controlled environment. So that started me thinking on, like, oh, how it's... I'm gonna stop saying child idea of freedom, and I'm gonna go back to the Ripperoo being that I seemingly have a bunch of characters that I really like knowing about, or I would really like to know more about, but there's nothing there. I want to go scuba diving in a puddle. So, because Ripperoo, there's no lore that I know of. No one ever talked about him, but he's my favorite Crash Bandicoot character. But he's just, oh yeah, he's crazy. That's basically his gimmick. He's a kangaroo in a straitjacket, alright? What do you want? Like, I want to know what... I don't know, did something go wrong during his experiment to make him insane? But also, as I said earlier, I tend to I don't think I gravitate, but there are some characters where it's... I'd love to know more about them, but there's nothing more to know. Like the Gaping Dragon from Dark Souls 1. I found that to be such an interesting idea. Mainly because, like, how the hell did this happen? But it's just... The only thing there is speculation, and even then, no one ever speculates any further. So in Dark Souls 1, there's a boss called the Gaping Dragon, and it looked like a dragon that his ribcage exploded. So it's got a huge mouth where its, like, chest is, and it, like, bends backwards and lunges at you. And it's visually interesting, but horrifying. And people speculated, because there's no lore on the damn dragon in-game, so people wondered, well, there's this dragon scientist, so they probably, and keyword being probably, just made the Gaping Dragon and then released it into the sewer because it was a failed experiment. But that's all there is. No one ever looks any further into the damn thing. I find it so interesting, but there's nothing more to find interesting other than just wondering what happened. But there'll never be an answer, because the devs didn't care, the player bases doesn't care anymore. They've moved on to, like, other lore things. I mean, the lore of Dark Souls is pretty I mean, you're going to California hoping to find gold in present day. Like, the time's come and gone, pal. They're focusing on like dark Elden Ring, and I think there was another one. I guess Night Rain, but I don't know if that is anymore. That's just like I've not looked into Night Rain whatsoever. But they're not looking into Dark Souls 1 lore anymore. Which, understandable, but there's some stuff you left out. And I know this doesn't seem like a very rich ore vein to most people, but I want to know what happened to the Gaping Dragon. Why does it look like that? If it actually is an experiment of Seek the Scaleless, then what was the point of the experiment? Was it just that, like, Japanese bunker in World War II? I can't remember what specific thing. It was like 751, I think, where it's just, let's see what happens if I blow up a dragon. Just, it's still alive. That's cool. Write that down. What was the experiment, huh? If it was a failed experiment, they said. But it's nothing. The damn, like, item you get from killing it, or the chopping its tail off, doesn't give any lore, which most items in the game do, because it's very hands-off. It's just lore on a shoestring. But they didn't tie anything to the shoestring in regards to the Gaping Dragon or Ripperoo. I want to know about them. I find them interesting, but the people who make them didn't. And I bet you now... Oh, I found a way. I always do. I can tie it back into stuff I make. During my time making various animations and worlds, there's probably going to be something that I offhandedly go, yeah, and that's just like this area. Or and that's this character. They've served their purpose, they got robbed, or they sounded an alarm, or something. But someone out there is going to be, so why did they look like this? What was the inspiration for their name, or their outfit, or what? And I'll have to throw my hands up and go, I don't know, buddy. But you know what? Maybe I won't do that. I'm not saying I'm gonna, like, write a description of the live of every background character I ever make, but I think I may try and make it so there are no puddles for people in scuba gear to, like, jump into and be disappointed when they only get, like, millimeter into the water. That is to say, if someone has a question about maybe some lore or an aspect, I'm gonna do my best for there to be an answer. But I don't want to just make one up on the spot and have it not really mean anything. So, yeah, that's a double-edged sword. If there's an answer for everything, then, like, the main questions of the series that have quite, like, answers are a bit less valuable. So I guess they're... Well, that's fun. Maybe there is a reason that Ripperoo and the Gaping Dragon were abandoned. Because if there was just every single, like, loose end was tied up, then you just wrap your hand... Then you just wash your hands and be, alright, well, that's everything. So what's for lunch? You gotta sucker them in. You gotta get them invested and obsessed with solving every mystery, and then make sure there's loose ends that don't tie to anything. That's how you get them. Anyway, I've really got to make sure... I mean, this went a little better than the last show, I gotta say. I got 2 minutes before I gotta take my food out of the oven before it starts burning. But I went in knowing I'm going to have to improv. I didn't have to improv or ad-lib 30 additional minutes. No. I was able to think of stuff on the spot. Granted, this was a radio show, or a radio-style show, in which I have a time limit. But even with that... Well, no, I'm having to cut it short now. So maybe I would have been able to go on maybe an extra 5 minutes. But at least I was able to go on this... The few tangents I was able to, I found them enjoyable, and I hope that you did too, if you paid attention to them. I was going to tap my mic and be obnoxious. I was trying... I'd like to think of ways to be obnoxious without being too obnoxious. But I basically wanted to, like, tap the mic like you would tap a tank on an aquarium. But I don't have a way of doing that that's not, like, absurdly annoying. I'll find ways, don't you worry. Anyway, thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Stay tuned to Gotham FM.